another thing.
Hey.
Welcome to the Green live stream. My name is Edie Arndell. I'm your
And I'm
host.
Scott Free.
And this is Scott Free. he's my illustrious co-host.
Yeah.
We have very special guests today. We have Dr. Joe Jarvis and Kenny Ballentine from the Healing Us documentary about our healthcare system and how it doesn't work. It's a fantastic film.
Yes, it is.
It's available on kinema.com. Just go under films and type in Healing Us. You can rent it for $1.50 and you can screen it in your area. But Ariel's going to show us the trailer. Go ahead, Ariel.
We are governed in American healthcare by the for-profit interests.
In a typical year in modern America, approximately 68,000 people will die due to lack of adequate health care.
Health insurance companies are in the business to make money, and they will do whatever they can to avoid paying claims.
The fallout is they would rather make a sale than take care of a patient.
If me and Danny lived in Canada, if me and Danny lived in Mexico, me and Danny would still be living in Canada or Mexico.
They're not just numbers, they're people. They're ripped from us because of our greedy healthcare system that puts profits before people.
This is a profit-driven business. They can be sued if they are not acting in the best interest of their shareholders, not in the best interest of the patients.
So the problem is greed.
The Democrats and the Republicans are both in the pockets of Big Pharma and the insurance lobby.
We're at a real tipping point.
The people in this country know the system is broken.
It's time for change.
Wow, it's a really wonderful film. And thank you so much, Dr. Joe Jarvis, for being here with us today. Can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to make the film and anything else you want to talk about it?
Well, I was interested in making a film about the terrible place we're in healthcare in the United States since over a quarter of a century ago. I've been a single payer advocate since the 1990s, when I first became acquainted with the P&HP group. In fact, I served on their board briefly for 2 or 3 years. And I was speaking all over Utah, which is my home state. Commonly found myself in front of audiences very, very conservative, because that's the nature of Utah, and realized that that's kind of making progress by inches, and saw the impact that films could have, documentary films could have on a topic, and decided I wanted to try to produce a film about healthcare, about what's wrong with it and where we can go from where we already are. Back in 2006, I actually organized a nonprofit, and that nonprofit was supposed to be the host for producing the film. That nonprofit ended up taking a different approach. Eventually, the board veered off in another direction, and I didn't have the opportunity I thought I was going to have. Not long after that, of course, Obamacare was passed, and the oxygen went out of the room for health system reform for 6 or 8 years. By the time it came back, late in the 20-teens, I decided to get back into the conversation by writing a book. And that book, which is called The Purple World, got enough circulation that I encountered people from several other states in the West where single payer movements were ongoing, one of them being the state of Washington. And it was the state of Washington, group of those people, who introduced me to Kenny Ballentine, the person who directed our film. And he came to interview me as just to be one of the people who was featured on the film. And as I talked with him about it, it rekindled that desire in my own heart to get a film done. And he and I ended up agreeing to the business end of the film production, and I became the executive producer. Much of the direction, is Kenny's. I don't want to take claim credit for a lot of what you see in the film. it's Kenny's idea. It was Kenny's from the start, from the get-go. He had complete control over this. I'm just grateful that I got to go along for the ride, and it fulfilled this desire of mine to put it out there in film form so people could feel it and experience it in ways other than an op-ed piece or a book or my giving a speech somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely very emotional to watch, to hear these people's stories. And you know, I came to know some of the people in the film, like Scott Denoyers, through the March for Medicare for All.
Yeah.
You know, I was one of the people that was there at the beginning of that, and it was an amazing experience. But we found that we were really running against a brick wall with the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
They say they like it, they say they want it, and yet they won't vote on it. They won't support it. They won't get it out of committee. Da 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 da. So
we saw, you know, a great example of that when Jimmy Dore did his Force the Vote to try to get, you know, a vote on Medicare for All, and it just showed that the progressive Democrats they're fake. They're not actual progressive. They're there to pretend that the Democratic Party is progressive, and it's doing a lot of damage because people are holding on to that party. And I appreciate that the film really makes it clear that it is our two-party system that is the problem here. Yes. And I also really appreciated that I think it was Ryan Knight who said, you know, you don't get anything for voting, you got to protest. And then you're like, no, there are ways that you can do this. But it's kind of a revolutionary thought for people to vote outside this duopoly, and that's what, you know, the Green Party's fighting for, right?
Yeah. I am no longer part of either of the two, if you will, major parties. And so I agree with you. Third party, getting people to recognize that there are other ways to cast your ballot. Getting people to realize that this is an important franchise. It's an important part of being American, and we need to stop just giving it over. People really are no longer serving our needs. They're not paying attention to us.
One thing that drives me nuts is I just feel like people are kind of in 7th grade and they're voting on peer pressure. They're voting for what other people are voting for. That's why they vote a certain way. Well, other people are doing it. It's too bad that they don't understand that our country was built with a lot of problems, but one of the things that they did give us was the power to vote, and it's extremely powerful. And the possibility is there.
The largest voting bloc in the country is not the non-voter that's eligible to vote. So we have to do a better job of giving them something to vote for. And I think, you know, universal health care, Medicare for all, however it shakes out to be, is a much, much better system than we have. And that is something people, I feel, would vote for if someone was offering it to them. I just wanted to say that Kenny's running a little late. Kenny Ballentine, the director, he should be here soon. But we are so happy to have Dr. Joe Jarvis with us.
Go ahead,
Scott.
I just wanted to add the thing that really, you learn something new every day, right? And the one thing that really hit me in the film was I hadn't thought about the incident where the boy committed suicide in this film. And it makes so much sense because if you become familiar with medications, so many of the modern medications, if you immediately go off them, they are a real suicide risk. That's something about those medications. I don't know the pharmaceutical details, but that's a real risk. And then he just got into some pathetic bureaucracy in Medicaid, and that ended up causing him to commit suicide because when you leave a drug immediately, it's extremely dangerous, and we have no mechanisms in place for that. And again, it's that like as the main message of the film is that we have to realize that medical health is a human emotional thing that we have to take care of. We have to take care of the people. And, profit should have nothing to do with this. Absolutely nothing. And let
me make it clear about that story. Danny's the name of the young man. Danny was on Medicaid, it's true, but
Yeah.
it wasn't Medicaid itself, the government program,
Okay.
was the problem. Traditional Medicaid would have had a place for him to get the medication he needed and to be properly slowly taken off of it as it was replaced with something else.
Okay.
He was, and very commonly across all the states now, he was on a Medicaid managed care program, a for-profit Medicaid managed care program.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
So this is one of the issues that keeps coming up in legislatures and in Congress. The argument is always being made that for-profit companies are more refined, they're sharper on their edge, they do things better, et cetera. All these things that you can hear echoing in those chambers. And so they give our tax money, which is taken from us to support Medicaid, they give it to a private for-profit entity, and allegedly then the customer, which read that the patient, gets served better, which is flat not true. And in Danny's case, Danny was required by New York law, this is where he lived, in order to maintain his status on that Medicaid managed care for-profit entity. Danny was required to make a regular payment, a co-payment to the system. It was only $20.
Yeah.
But he forgot to do it. He forgot one day to make that payment, and without notice to him, without somebody saying, hey, you forgot to make your payment, catch up. Just without notice, he was knocked off rolls of that Medicaid managed care. And since that's where he was enrolled there, he was only allowed to get Medicaid from there. And they refused to do anything for him because he was no longer, quote unquote, on the list. Therefore, he went, and the only reason he found out about this, nobody even noticed him that he was bumped off the list. He went to fill the prescription for this medication. And there the pharmacy says, well, you're no longer on Medicaid, so we can't fill this for you. You don't have payment for it.
Wow.
That wasn't $20. That was $250.
Right.
That's where the family ran into problems. They might have been able to, they had the $20. They couldn't find the $250 fee. This is all created by the business model of for-profit health insurance or managed care that has absolutely no interest in what the patient needs and only an interest in how much money they can make off of the patient.
Yeah.
That's what happened to Danny.
Wow.
That's why he eventually, over the next week, and of course, in the film, the point is made that he was re-enrolled because he did pay his $20 fee late, but then he was re-enrolled, but not for another month. Right. After he was dead of suicide, he was re-enrolled in the Medicaid managed care unit.
Wow.
It is absolutely
tragic
that we are in a system that puts human life at risk in order for profits to be maximized. That's
yes.
And I had no idea that our government officials allowed private to infiltrate Medicaid just like they have Medicare. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I wanted to welcome Mr. Kenny Ballentine.
Hey, Kenny. Hey.
Hi.
Nice to have you.
I'm here.
Hey.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, we are too. A fabulous film.
Yes, we just
Scott and I
watched
have
it.
both watched it,
Oh,
and
my God.
it's highly emotional and very to the point.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you could come on the live stream and talk about
Thank
it. So what inspired you to create this film?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, really. I mean, I don't think there's any one issue that is crippling more Americans than this. But probably the most, the strongest reason, the reason that kept me going and fascinated with this topic, is just that I'm a father. I've got 4 kids of my own. I'm usually self-employed. And so health insurance and healthcare has always been a big, big question mark in my own family. And just the ongoing stress and concern of what do I don't know what I'll do tomorrow if one of my kids is in an accident or is diagnosed with something very dire. I don't have any sense of security that we're going to be okay. I don't know. I never have. And getting to the bottom of that fear and finding out that it's one of the most universal emotions in the United States of America was what really turned this into a movie. It was fascinating to discover how much more unified the United States of America is on this topic than people are willing to believe. And honestly, the first piece of evidence towards that is Dr. Joe Jarvis and I being close friends and collaborators on this movie, right? I mean, when I began, I did not think that my main ally would be a let's see, how should I put this? An affluent white male Republican from Utah.
Yeah.
Or at least former Republican.
Yeah,
Conservative, I'll say. Conservative from Utah. And that's because this is touching everyone. And all you have to do is have a frank conversation with your neighbor, and you find out that it's hurting them as much as anyone else. There is nothing connecting and unifying America more than our lack of adequate health care.
Oh my God.
Yes. I would say the Luigi Mangione thing kind of demonstrated how everybody has a healthcare horror story. It either happened to them or somebody they love dearly. They couldn't get the care they need, and a lot of people lost the person they love. I mean, what is it? 70,000 people a year die from lack of health care, and then your movie said it's 250,000 people. Now I can't quite remember that statistic now that I'm trying to pull it out of my head.
Let me refresh your memory about the statistic.
Thank you.
Yeah, because they're actually worse than the movie states. They're even worse now.
Okay.
The movie uses the term 68,000 deaths per year due to uninsurance, meaning people couldn't get financing for their health care and therefore were excluded, like Danny was excluded because he didn't have financing for the care that he needed. The number 250,000, I think, is one that I used in the film when I was interviewed by Kenny, and it has to do with how many deaths there are per year in the United States due to preventable injury to hospitalized patients. So our hospitals are focused on their profits, they're focused on the revenue streams, on the business. They're forgetting about what needs to happen to really care for patients properly. They often understaff because labor is the biggest cost in hospitals. And so they staff down in order to have a better profit margin every quarter. And that means that there's not somebody at the bedside when that person who's frail needs to get up and go to the bathroom, and they fall and get injured and they can die from those injuries. There's one further number that I'd throw out that's more recent than the film.
Okay.
Recently, a physician in California did some kind of back of the envelope figuring, and he shared it with the world so that it can be checked, about how many people truly are dying in the United States due to the business model of health insurance. So not just whether you are uninsured completely, but whether even if you are insured, you're able to access the care, or not. That's entirely dependent on a lot of different factors related to your health insurance policy. And he very carefully documented that number is probably 200,000 deaths per year due to the health insurance business model in the United States.
Certainly,
if you add together the figures, you're putting yourself in the range of over 500,000 deaths per year, which is where the big two causes of death in the country are. Heart disease is the number one leading cause of death in the country, and it's 600,000 deaths a year. And cancer is just below 600,000 deaths a year is the number two. So the number three leading cause of death in the United States after heart disease and cancer is the business model of health insurance.
Wow.
It is a threat to society.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a menace at this point.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about why it's affordable. We know it's popular. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit. There's been many surveys done, research done that like 90% of Democrats, about 50% of Republicans, and I don't know the latest figures, and what is it, maybe 65% of independents. So basically everyone says, yes, please, that we would like to have this. We think it's a great idea. I know people get into the details of how you're going to pay for that. That's what you always hear. So would someone like to address that part?
I'll just start with my small comment and then turn it over to Dr. Jarvis, because he has a lot more to say about this and a lot better. But what I will say is that most of the people who are saying, "Hey, how are we going to pay for this?" are the politicians who don't want it to happen. Right. Pretty much everyone I know who, when this comes up, they already know that we're paying, out the ear already, spending more money than any other country in the world, and seeing our neighbors getting more for paying less. So the best example of this was Joe Biden. When he was asked what would happen if a Medicare for All bill was put in front of him, and he said he would veto it because how on earth would we pay for it? And he threw out this number. I don't remember what the number was, but it was some ridiculous number. He was like, how much?
It's like $4 trillion or something.
And what he was actually, the number he was quoting was a number over 10 years. It wasn't an annual. It was a number over 10 years, and when you divided that number by 10, it was less than we're spending already.
Right.
He was just admitting to all of us that it would cost less. So, in terms of how it would cost less, Dr. Joe.
So, there's a couple of major causes of excess cost in our system that's built primarily on how to make as much money as possible, not how to take care of patients as well as possible. When you're trying to make as much money as possible, what you try to do is siphon in as much of the funds from whatever source as you can, get them in there, and then take a cut off the top, as big a cut off the top as you can, to assure yourself those really handsome profits. That's pretty much, I've just described the health insurance business model. That's what they do. They figure out how to not pay for the care that people think they're buying when they pay a premium. They figure out how to do that in order to make as much money as possible off of that revenue stream. It costs money to administer a health fund that way. If you're going to try to figure out how to not pay for care, you're going to have to get into the weeds, and that means a lot of personnel time, a lot of labor. Overhead just multiplies from that. So one of the major costs that we in the United States have, and Kenny's right, we pay more for healthcare than does the citizenry of any other country, bar none. In fact, it's not just more. We pay twice as much as the average other first world country. It's a huge amount. It's a glaring amount different than anyone else.
I think in the film it was like $9,000. And
yeah,
if it was like around 4,800 or something, it would be on par with the rest of the countries that provide universal health care.
Updating that number to today's number, we're approaching $15,000 per person per year for healthcare in the United States. Yeah. $5 trillion, almost 20% of the gross domestic product. And the closest country is Germany, which is 60% of those amounts. And the rest of the
$5 trillion a year?
$5 trillion a year is what we're doing for healthcare now. It's a huge amount of money. And so the inefficiency of health insurance, private for-profit health insurance, drives well over $500 billion loss per year in the United States healthcare system. Well over that. The other thing is, if you're not actually trying hard to do care right, if you're trying hard to make as much money as possible, but you're not actually thinking carefully about how to make sure you do it right for every person, each time that they have an encounter with the health system, you have a mediocre quality care system at best, and that's what we have. Poor quality care costs more. So this is something that's hard for people to get their minds around. We are used to paying more for higher quality products. In a so-called market,
Right.
the Cadillac costs more than the Yugo, right? Because you're getting better quality out of it. So we're thinking, yeah, we're paying a lot, but we must be getting really high quality healthcare. In fact, it's the other way around. We are paying more because we have poor quality care. Both of those things, that is the inefficiencies and poor quality, are addressed by a single payer proposal. Both of them improve that and therefore save us literally more than $1 trillion per year. This is the money that Biden didn't understand he was talking about, that Kenny was just referring to. That's what we can say back to the people who say we can't afford it is we can't afford not to. We can't afford to continue to have more and more of the gross domestic product go into healthcare and less of it actually go for the people who need the care. We can't afford that, because at some point, when we skew too much in one direction in the economy, the whole economy falls apart. The wheels fall off of our economic engine, and we stop functioning as an economic society. We can't afford to wait for that to happen. We have to change now before a catastrophic moment, which is in the not too distant future, occurs. That's the answer to your question.
Absolutely. And I will say, the day after Biden said that, he sent $50 billion to Ukraine and $10 billion to Israel. So, I mean, it's horrific to watch our politicians when they, play this game of trying to avoid, their donors don't want them to end the private health insurance. And that's all their motivation. That's why they play this game.
They're bought and paid for it, as Kenny well documents in the film.
Yeah.
So we have a graphic, Ariel, if you can grab it, about the CEOs, how much they make. There you go.
And the sick thing about it is, as you've explained really well, the entire system is completely unnecessary. We could do without this system entirely, and we would be fine if we were getting health care instead of health insurance. And the other thing I think, in terms of a selling point, you could disagree with me on this, but I've always thought that I didn't like when the argument came, oh, but you're going to take away my insurance company. I love them. Well, if we presented it as public option, or no, you could still have this, but as soon as everyone goes to Medicare, 90% go to Medicare, the cost of private health insurance will skyrocket, and then they won't be staying on it for much longer. But what I don't like is when the argument comes into, oh, they're going to take it away from us. It's like, no, you can still have it. It just,
people act like the having the choice of insurers is the choice that people are really worried about.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not true. Nobody actually, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people actually have a choice of insurance companies. The employer makes that choice. The individuals almost never do.
Right. Correct.
What people are concerned about is whether they can have the choice of physician or other provider that they care about.
Yeah.
And this is the case because when President Obama was selling the Affordable Care Act, what did he say over and over again? He said, you can keep your doctor.
Yeah.
Because they polled and they knew that's what people actually cared about. They wanted to know, can I go to the doctor that I choose?
Right.
That's the choice people care about. And guess what? That's the choice that insurance denies you.
Right.
I don't care how wonderful you think your insurance company is. Sooner or later, they're going to tell you, no, you can't go see that doctor.
And your film demonstrated beautifully that the insurance company gets between the doctor and the patient, to the point of the one girl passed away because she couldn't get a liver transplant, I think it was.
Right.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, somebody died.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And those stories are so necessary, Kenny, for that film. They really are. They are really, I know it's hard to watch them. It's hard, but they are so necessary.
And maybe the kind of the saddest part about making the film was how easy it was to find those stories. It seems like everyone either has one in their own family or knows somebody nearby, so it's just a massive disaster of a situation that we're living in. We talk about insurance. One of the things that Dr. Joe pointed out in our interview that I found really poignant, or just makes it how kind of obviously we're all being scammed, is just looking at what insurance is, right? What insurance is supposed to be, right? Insurance is a good thing. Like, I love the idea of insurance, right? If there's something that is really rare, but if it happens, could be catastrophic and ruin your life if you're not ready for it. So we all band together and put our money into a shared pot for that off chance that one of you has this terrible thing happen to you, like your house burning down, say.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. But the fact that you might have a baby is not catastrophic or rare, unplanned, or necessarily undesirable, right?
Yeah.
That's just kind of part of the guaranteed human existence, is that we all have just inevitable healthcare needs. So insurance, I just want everybody to get that idea disconnected from healthcare. It doesn't make any sense being connected together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So spoiler
care.
alert.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Everybody needs care.
Yeah, Michelle says hi.
Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Good to see you.
I love Michelle.
Well, I'm going to give away my age a little bit here, but when I had my son, I paid $5 to have him. That was for the telephone in the room.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say what year.
It's been a little.
You don't have
while.
to say.
It's been a hot minute since you had a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the story that I love, the horrible story that I'll talk about is after the Luigi incident, all the stories going around. The one tweet that I saw of a pediatric neuropathy nurse who said she has to watch her child patients go through 5 seizures before they will get covered on this drug. It is a horror situation that she has to go to for her job every day. I mean, those are the kind of stories we saw after,
Yeah. Well, I had an experience just recently. So my healthcare provider, not to, instead of naming names, I'll just call it Pfizer Permanente.
Yeah, we won't know.
We'll just call it that. The last time I saw my doctor, he's always wearing a stethoscope, around his neck. And he comes in and we're chatting, and the movie was out, and I thought I'd bring it up and kind of see if I can get an opinion out of him. And he immediately just kind of looked a little crestfallen, and he looked at me and he said, "You know why I wear this stethoscope around my neck?" And he said, I wear this just to remind me that I am a doctor, but I never use it. Yeah. I have a checklist that's like a flow chart that basically says, if this, then that, if this, then that, because that's how things are decided if they're going to be covered or not. And in a system like Kaiser, it's all very structured and systemized. And so he's very candidly said, I don't really feel like a doctor anymore. I show up, I ask you the questions, I put the answers into this chart, and then the chart decides whatever is going to happen next. I don't even have to think.
Wow.
So that's frightening,
So they're wondering, why did I go to medical school? I could have just read this piece of paper, right?
Oh yeah, or we could just turn it
follow
over
this
to
program.
Chat GPT or something to be our doctors now. Yeah.
Wow.
The other thing that happened that was kind of fun. I, like everybody else, I got on Red Note last week, and
all right.
And it was really, really funny. And one of the big stories that went around was young Chinese folks are saying, now our government tells us that you guys have to pay $1,000 for an ambulance. Isn't that just our government propaganda? we don't believe them. And we're like, yeah, we have to pay.
No,
that's
it's true.
That's sad.
Oh, I mean,
That's
yeah,
sad.
right. It's a funny, sad story. I mean,
Yeah.
I had that. I drove someone to the hospital because we weren't going to pay $1,000, and I'm like, and it was completely dangerous. It was completely dangerous.
Sure.
It was a high blood pressure episode, and I shouldn't have done it, but we were scared of the $1,000 bill. I mean,
no, if I could get guaranteed a flat rate, $1,000 per ambulance, I'd probably take it.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Okay.
just
This was a few years back. This was some years back.
yeah.
Wow. I did
I
want to
remember
ask.
another
Oh,
incident
sorry,
when
go
I
ahead.
was young. I was playing like tackle football with a group of kids from high school, and we weren't supposed to be playing tackle football. That was weird. Our parents had said, "Don't do that," but we did anyway. And I tackled my friend, and as he hit the ground, I felt his collarbone break, and heard his collarbone break. And we're like, oh dear, so what do we do? What is the right thing to do? And I saw across the street, there was an ambulance parked across the street. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be the hero and do the right thing. Run across the street and tell the ambulance, hey, this guy's hurt. He needs help. So they come over, they give him care, they take him somewhere, right? And later I find out that his parents were kind of devastated by the fact that I had taken that route, because it led to a chain of events that ended up costing them a tremendous amount of money. You know, they would have gladly have just driven him to the hospital themselves. So I mean, it's like you're in a position where what is the right thing to do? You don't even know what the right thing to do is anymore.
Yeah. I want to put this comment up real quick. Michelle says, I went home after breaking my ankle because I didn't want to incur an ambulance cost.
I know. It's so true. It's so true.
And she's going to be running for Congress in Maryland, 6th
Yay,
District.
Hey, good for Michelle. That's awesome.
Yes.
Super.
Yeah.
I have a red beret that was made by Michelle.
Oh, wow. Oh, Michelle, you did the red berets. I love that part of the film. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, that's honestly kind of what really initiated the whole project. I had known
Laura?
for some time that I wanted to make a film on healthcare. I wasn't sure how I wanted to approach it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard an interview with Laura Fielding talking about red berets for Medicare for All on a podcast, and heard her story talking about this group of mostly women up in Seattle who are crocheting and knitting red berets as a symbol of solidarity for healthcare for all. And I thought, that is a cool, cute story.
Yes.
And I thought, I bet there's a cute 5-minute short film in that, and called her up and said, hey, I want to come up and interview you and make a movie about what you're doing. And once she knew that a filmmaker was coming up to cover what she's doing, she went, she got extremely active and contacted everyone she could think of within the movement. And before I knew it, I had like 25 interviews lined up by the time I got up there, and including my introduction to Dr. Jarvis. And like she alone is responsible for it turning into, I want to make a movie about these red berets, into what the movie turned into, which spanned the entire country in scope. And she's a very inspiring person. And
Are you talking about Laura Fielding?
Yeah.
Michelle? Yeah. So I met her through the March for Medicare for All, and me and Sharif, which is pictured in the film, kind of
I know Sharif.
off. It went huge, and then I don't know what happened later, because I had my own health crisis that I had to step back. But we do have some comments in the chat. There you go. Did any of you see Carolyn Kennedy's cutting assessment of RFK as possible head of Department of Health and Human Services? She does not hold back.
I have not seen it. No.
I saw a headline about it. I haven't read it all yet, but that tracks.
Yeah. And then we have a question. Hi, BL. How do we fight for universal health care now that Trump is trying to ruin Medicaid? Dr. Jarvis, I think you have an answer for that one.
Yes, I am approaching it on a state level. I gave up on Congress years ago and have been trying to organize single payer health system reform by ballot in Utah for at least 20 years. But now in the last 5 years, especially, we're getting coalesced around a proposal. I have a small group of people joined together with me, and now an even smaller group has emerged from that original handful. And we have worked hard to get the statute actually drafted. We're starting to circulate it in its draft form to try to get some good comments and improve it. Soon it'll be ready to be submitted for review at the Lieutenant Governor's office, which is a required step. We formed a political issue committee, a PIC, which is required by the statute related to ballot initiatives. You have to run a ballot initiative using a PIC as your financial vehicle. We're actively seeking donations. If you're so inclined, you can find us at www.utahcares.vote and make a donation online. We will, after we get the Lieutenant Governor's approval, we'll have to collect more than 100,000 signatures. And there's a very strict way of doing that in Utah law. Makes it, the hurdles have to be as high as possible.
Yeah.
And then you run a campaign, assuming you get on the ballot, and our goal is to do it for the 2026 ballot. Then you run a campaign. Your candidate is your proposal. And we will be putting that in front of the people of Utah, hoping to persuade them that doing business an entirely different way, which is everyone has the financing they need for all medically necessary care, is the right thing to do. We will not require anyone to make a copayment or meet a deductible. We will find a way to finance it. It actually will cost a lot less to do it the way we propose to do it. Find a way to finance it that's done in advance so that at the time of service, there will be no need to bring your wallet out. And we will tell the hospitals, your job isn't to make money. Your job is care for people as well as it is possible to do so. And hopefully we'll find a majority of voters agreeing with us. That's what we're going to do about it right now. While Trump is the president, we're going to go right after this and basically say to the rest of the nation, this is how we care for each other. This is how we put hands on each other. And this is how we will heal these fissures that are all over our society, as Kenny so ably organized the film around.
And Dr. Jarvis,
go ahead.
Could you speak a little more about both how the state will finance, and then you talked about an existing system that already exists for public employees that you will use as your base? Because that sounds fascinating.
So Utah, as far as I know, this is a unique thing in Utah, and if I'm wrong, then I'd love to hear about it from someone else. There is a nonprofit private trust fund in Utah called the Public Employees Health Plan that takes care of health benefits for a segment of the publicly employed workforce and their dependents in the state. It's not just state employees, it's also civic employees, county employees, school district, et cetera. All such employees are eligible to enroll in the Public Employees Health Plan. That organization has considered itself, since its inception now 40 years ago, to be primarily about making sure the care is best and optimal. It's not about trying to make money. They're not in business to make money. They therefore have ended up with an overhead that is less than 4%, very much like Medicare in its pristine original form, and not like the insurance, the health insurance industry, which runs overheads over 20%, 25, 30% even. So there's a huge difference between being a physician and caring for a patient who's on PEHP as opposed to being on United Care, a patient who's on that. It's a lot easier as a physician to work with that organization because they're trying to make the care possible. They're not trying to get in your way. We plan to use that as our nidus. There's about 200,000 Utahns who are covered by that right now. We're trying to use that as the nidus and turn it by statute through the ballot initiative into everyone's payer for healthcare in Utah, where all of the money that's currently taxed out of us in Utah to go into the healthcare system will be redirected to, and we've renamed it PHP Utah Cares. That will be the name of the payer. We'll reroute that money to Utah Cares, and we will tell them everybody's medically necessary care is your business. That's what you're there to pay for. We're going to replace the money that's currently coming from the employment sector, the private employers, which is generally what I would consider to be a wage tax right now. About 22% of wages is actually spent on the health benefit. Instead, we'll have a very small sliver of an overall business, money exchange tax, basically what it is, that will go directly to the health fund managed by Utah Cares. And we'll call it the health tax or the health premium or whatever you want. And it's dedicated for that purpose so that it will be built up over time explicitly to care for Utah's patients. That's our plan. That's what we're basically putting before the people.
That is fantastic. I mean, that was another thing that I loved about the film, is that at the end you were presenting the possibilities, and state-run health care was really described quite well. And the efforts have been in Washington and California and New York. And now, actually, Dr. Jarvis, this sounds the most promising of all. It really does.
I will be so excited if it happens in Utah first.
Oh, right.
Like that, I think would be, what a statement, right? Utah, the first to single payer healthcare.
And
So-
100,000 signatures. Yeah, that's
Utahns, like all Americans, Utahns know that people need health care.
Yeah.
And over again, Americans, Utahns included, have voted to fund health care. We are very generous historically with health care. And what we're basically saying is, let's pay less and let's get more.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Pay less, get more. That sounds
Yeah.
like an ad.
Yeah.
BL says, I like the idea that you're doing this in Utah.
Yes, that is fantastic.
And so I wanted to kind of switch it around a little bit. We have 12 minutes left or so. This film was put out in 2023. The March for Medicare for All happened in 2021. And who's been in charge for the last 4 years? And haven't heard anything? Hang on.
Yeah.
Until November 6th.
Right.
After the election, it's be quiet and get in line because I'm scared of Trump. And now they're all speaking.
Right. Rokon is back. Rokon is back. Bernie Sanders is back. Right. After the 4 years of silence.
And I noticed there were some Democrats in the film, but I think the problem that Greens have with that, and a lot of people have with that they didn't work on it while they had the power.
Right.
So I don't know if you all have a comment on that.
Well, I mean, that last question that you posted about, what do we do now that Trump is in charge? I almost feel more optimistic with Trump in charge in one way. I mean, there's a big swath of the voting populace that I think was kind of lulled into a sense of some kind of false sense of security, of just knowing that Democrats were in charge. I think one of the things that took a ton of wind out of the sails of the movement for universal health care was Obamacare, right? When that came along and was sold as this, I was, I'll say it, I was kind of caught up all in that when it happened. And, it felt like a meaningful step forward had happened. It really took a new set of glasses to see that this really made things worse in many ways. So to have I guess I'm a silver linings type of person, but to have someone in charge who is not going to be kind of spoon feeding us this idea that you don't have to worry because the good people are in charge now, kind of thing.
Right.
It might be what everyone needs to keep the fire ignited, because I was seeing that fire die out, and so if a Trump regime is what it takes to get people motivated and moving, then so be it.
One of the things that Jill Stein talked about was, on day one, declare a climate emergency, declare a health emergency. Actually, Edie had a conversation with her about what could be done, as a president to get Medicare for all, drop the age restriction on Medicare for all. I mean, there are ways that a president who decides, I'm going to go in there and take action. Well, look at Trump. He's going in there and taking action. It's for all the worst reasons, but he's going in there and doing something. And that's the thing about the Democrats. They will not take that because they're pretending. They pretend to be the good guys.
It was the 1881A of the Social Security Act that Libby, Montana received universal health care because it was signed off on. The president could do that. We have lots of comments. BL is talking about, you got waves to scot-free from Mistress of Music.
Joanna. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Yeah, she has a wonderful radio station.
What's the name of your bill?
The bill is called by the name of the future payer, Utah Cares. Right now, it's the Utah Cares bill.
Yeah. Excellent. And BL, I agree with you completely. I am very upset with Bernie. Everyone should have health care. Go kick rocks, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Supposed to vote for Genocide Joe. Well, I didn't listen.
But all this really brings me back to the through the states concept, because so many of us are having these conversations that rely upon us having the right president, the right Congress, and a whole big chain of events that I can't really influence myself. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good to call your representatives and do all those, civic duties, do those things. That's good. But there's not a lot you can do right now to change the flow in Congress. I can make an impact in my own state, though, right? Mm-hmm. The ballot initiative programs in many states give you direct, it's not exactly direct democracy, but very close to something like direct democracy, where the people can come together and actually make a change that makes a difference in people's lives in your own lifetime.
Yeah, it depends on the state, by the way.
Yeah, it's not every state, and I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But if we end up with 5 or 6 states all doing this successfully, we're going to see the demand and the outrage and the movement grow exponentially. So,
go ahead, Edie. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and I found out when I joined the March for Medicare for All that there is kind of a debate between the national and the states, because states will actually have to pay. And on the national level, there's like the MMT theory that,
Okay, so let me address that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Let me address that. Okay, so first of all, it is true. The federal government is the source of healthcare funding in the United States. That's been true for a lot of years now, at least since Medicare, 50 some odd years ago. That's been the case. The majority of money is federal dollars. No state will change that. Now, it's also the case that Medicare is a $600 billion a year expense for the federal government. Medicaid is a similar amount of money, mostly federal, a little bit of state. But if you add all the state and local monies going into healthcare, it's around the same figure. It's somewhere around $700-800 billion a year. So it's not insignificant. We can't ignore the fact that states have been making contributions, measurable contributions to healthcare all along. It's also federal tax policy that allows that employer to pass on the cost of buying the health benefit by writing it off their corporate taxes, pass it on to Uncle Sam. That's also true. We need to preserve all of that in our proposals at the state level. The federal government's got to be the funder. You can't not do it. There's no other way you can't replace them. They are the big funder. That is obviously planned into what we're proposing. We need to recruit the Medicaid and Medicare dollars, and therefore actually really take good care of Medicare and Medicaid enrollees in our system that we're proposing. Absolutely true.
That is an excellent point.
I don't want any of those MMT people to be all flustered about the fact that Utah might do this, because we know the federal government's got to be the payer. Of course, they're going to be the payer. We're going to set the example, let them continue to be the payer. We're just going to manage it so that actually the money is spent on real healthcare and not on making some United Healthcare executive wealthy.
Right. No, and I think thank you, Dr. Jarvis, for doing all this work to get Utah Cares going, and because there is no doubt we'll be looking at it as an example, and certainly the Illinois Green Party, Edie, initiative time. We need to take this on. I looked around because after the film, I was like, well, what's Illinois doing statewide? And I found an Illinois Single Payer Coalition group, but I'm not sure if they're just Illinoisans who really support Medicare for all nationally, or whether they are actually doing something on a state level. So I will investigate them, but we need to be, we are having talks with other Green parties in other states, and this needs to be a priority, because I do think you are correct. I think that the state push is what may finally get it over, because you're right. To tackle our federal government, it's like, we're going to do that. We're just not giving that up, but I think it is the right approach.
The goal is Medicare for all.
Yeah,
that is the goal. Yeah. We want everybody in and nobody out nationwide. That's the goal. Yeah. The question is, politically, tactically, how do we get from here to there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those who are arguing that it has to be done through Congress, well, they have a viable argument. Congress would be the ideal place to do it, but I've done my best to try to affect how that may or may not play out, and I've come to the conclusion that I see no viable pathway forward in my lifetime.
Okay.
I'm 70 years old, and maybe somebody younger can see it in their lifetime, but I'm trying to do something that will last for my kids and my grandkids. If that's going to be the case, it isn't going to happen in Congress. I've got to do it in Utah and hope that gets noticed by Congress and everybody else. And then we can make it happen. Like I think one of the two of you mentioned, marijuana laws have changed state by state, and sooner or later it's going to be a national phenomenon.
Yeah. And that's why I want people who care about this, who also might be saying, oh, that's great for Utah, but that doesn't really help me. The thing I think we should all be doing is, if you don't have an initiative forming in your state that you can get behind and support, is support Utah. Fly out to Washington and march with the Red Berets. Support New York Health, support CalCare, and get involved with any of them, because any one of them can be the tipping point that completely changes the flow of this issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially California. They were so close, but Governor Gavin Newsom, didn't get it done.
Let's see, which party does he belong to? My
neighbor, by the way.
I can't remember.
Pardon?
Yeah. I say, which party does he belong to?
I wonder.
I know.
Yeah. The correct answer is.
One thing before we go, I wanted you all to talk about Medicare Advantage and how it's not really Medicare.
Horrible.
Okay, Medicare Advantage was invented about 20 years ago by market people in Congress, trying to say Medicare itself isn't good enough. It's not efficient enough. The private sector is where efficiency always happens. We're going to let private sector, and basically these are health insurance companies that are for profit, market something to people, and you'll see it'll save a lot of money. Well, okay, so it was implemented, and it actually, and this is now well documented as of the last 5 or 6 years, it has overspent by far what just plain old vanilla flavored Medicare would have for all of these people, and it's made their lives miserable.
Yeah.
Once you get on a Medicare Advantage plan, you can be told, no, you can't go see that particular doctor, or no, you're not allowed into that hospital. They do all of the usual kind of pre-approval authorizations that our insurance industry is famous for. They do all that to these poor senior citizens who thought that they were just getting Medicare.
Right.
Being sold a bill of goods by all these advertisements that don't tell them the truth. They buy into it and they end up losing what is really, I'm on regular Medicare with a supplemental. And I try to tell everybody that I can, that's what you need to do. You need to stay off of these Medicare Advantage plans because they're very expensive. They may not cost you anything out of your pocket, but they're costing the taxpayer a whole lot of extra money. And they're making it impossible for you to get the care that you need. Many, many very important health centers across the country now are refusing Medicare Advantage patients.
Wow.
Because they can't afford to treat them. I'll give you an example. The Mayo Clinic will not take anybody who is on Medicare Advantage.
Wow.
Period. End of statement. It's just done. They're
And
done.
who signed that bill? Bill Clinton. And what party is he from? Ding,
Yeah.
ding, 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 ding.
Anybody know? There's a lot of comments. Michelle says, why don't we push Hulu to air Healing Us?
Ah, well,
Yeah.
let's please.
I'll do whatever I can.
Please plug it again. Kinema.com. Is that where it is?
Yeah, I would say
If
if you can, our favorite places for people to watch the movie are Kinema.
Yeah.
It has a lot of tools for organizing your own screenings for the film. So that's like cinema, but with a K, Kinema. Otherwise, if you want to see the movie and not give money to Jeff Bezos, you can also see it on an app called the Indie Channel. Indie Channel app is also carrying Healing Us.
Nice.
It's a good place to check it out as well. If it's just easier for you, then watch it on Amazon. That's cool too, and we'll share our money with Bezos, and that's fine.
And really, we recommend this film highly. Please, everyone, see it. It is incredible.
Thank you.
Really beautiful film. Beautiful film, really.
I did want to tell everyone that Illinois Green Party will be having a virtual screening the last day of February. I believe it's going to be February 28th. And you can screen it at your library or at, your university. Kinema makes it really easy. And it's definitely something we need to bring to the public and make sure everyone sees it. So.
And Chibu Osonia, who's running for office, also in 2026, she's got a screening going in Champaign at the Champaign Library. I don't have the details in front of me, but if you go to ilgp.org/events, we have it on the events page. And that is the first, right? Do I have that right?
I think it's the first, but the information is at ilgp.org/events. And if everyone can please like the stream.
Yes, please do that.
Subscribe to our channel. We have amazing guests like we have today.
Thank you so much. This has been
and please share.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, very inspirational night. I am thrilled. Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. You guys can hang on.